The Invisible Man is the remake we all deserve. With the endless amounts of reboots and remakes that we're seeing in today's age of cinema, as they constantly fail one after the other, especially the abysmal attempt at rebooting Universal monsters with the Dark Universe. But there is one remake that stands out from the rest, and that is Leigh Whannell's The Invisible Man. What makes the Invisible Man character so intriguing is that it can be reshaped and reformed in any way possible. The 1933 Invisible Man is a pretty accurate adaptation of H.G. Wells's novel, and it has a pretty creepy premise. There's a guy that you can't see, and he could possibly be standing right next to you. And for a film that is almost a century old, it has pretty great special effects. But the director knew that this premise could be seen as absurd to some extent. So he leaned into that absurdity with humor, making the movie feel more like a comedy than a thriller horror. And that is what makes this character so iconic, because the idea of the character can expand itself across so many different genres, and it can be enhanced in so many different ways, which is why I'm happy about this remake. Leigh Whannell has taken the idea of the Invisible Man and has reimagined him into a modern horror film by exploring gaslighting through the lens of this classic movie monster, while also telling a harrowing story of domestic abuse, diving deep into the emotional and psychological scarring that comes from being in an abusive relationship, and how that sticks with you long after the abuse has stopped, even showcasing the fear of leaving one, having that fear that they will find you, that fear of being stalked and hunted by the monsters in our lives. This approach makes this a very personal but very universal film, grounding itself emotionally. Leigh Whannell crafts this story with these dramatically heavy and relevant themes, and he balances it within the thrills of the horror thriller genre. And he does it in such an intriguing manner where it just sucks you into the movie. We watch Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss, escape an abusive relationship in the opening sequence that shows us everything we need to know about what's happening without anyone saying anything. Through her actions, we come to an understanding that this man is dangerous. It's then slowly revealed to us a bit later on how dangerous he really is by all the things that Adrian has done to Cecilia. It's then further expanded upon by all the awful things he does throughout the film to destroy her, mentally and physically. So you instantly care about her every step of the way. She's trying to get back into the world by accomplishing to walk outside to get the mail or to get a job. She's living with a childhood friend and his daughter to feel safe. And we get a couple of really cheesy scenes of them getting along, like the cliched pillow fight. But with all of that, we see her trying to move on with her life. But we still see her haunted by this man. She fears that Adrian is going to find a way to get her, even after the news of his sudden suicide. This fear is then taken to a new height when it's explored through the Invisible Man concept. Adrian has designed an invisibility suit to prey on Cecilia. He toys with her emotions, he plays mental games with her, and he manipulates everything around her. She knows she's being stalked and hunted by him, but just like Adrian and his actions, her concerns are invisible to everyone around her. Everybody keeps telling her that she's crazy, it's all in her head, and that nothing bad is gonna happen. While more and more bad shit starts happening, with the villain's plan coming into fruition as the narrative progresses. We experience the trauma that she can't escape. We experience the control that this man has over her life. And we experience her downfall throughout this film. only to see her growth and her strength in the face of this monster to finally defeat him by preying on him the same way he preyed on her and killing him the same way he killed her sister. Finally, having freedom from this monster. But the trauma from this abuse is burrowed deep inside of her as we look into the eyes of a survivor. Elizabeth Moss controls this film with her amazing performance. It's what makes this film as effective as it is. She is just emotionally enthralling. The pain, the trauma, the frustration, the paranoia, and the terror are expressed so vividly through her expressions where we are drawn into this situation with her. We feel what she feels. The idea of being stalked by someone you can't see and they're possibly in the room with you is a creepy premise, and it's executed effectively throughout this film. Because throughout the film, it's never clear where the Invisible Man is lurking, or if he's even present at all. This forces the audience to stay on alert, searching the frame for this invisible threat. And with Leigh Whannell's direction and Stephen DeShio's cinematography, they quietly hold onto shots and smoothly pan across rooms, utilizing the empty spaces of a room to trick the audience into thinking where the Invisible Man actually is, creating this eerie atmosphere of an absent environment, but there's a sense of presence. And this puts the audience in the perspective of Cecilia, sharing her paranoia in this situation. The silence adds to that as well. The movie lingers in its quiet moments to put us in the headspace of the main character as Leigh Whannell builds tension meticulously, where the suspense of not knowing what's going to happen next is amplified. Leigh Whannell even uses this premise to play around with horror tropes, mostly based in slasher films and supernatural films, to build on more tension. He specifically does it with jump scares, like the dog bowl getting knocked over in the opening sequence. That jump scare is considered a fake out jump scare, the lamest of jump scares, because it's a scare that has nothing to do with the threat of the film. It's usually a friend popping out and scaring you, or a cat jumping out, or someone knocking something over. It has nothing to do with the threat of the film. It's just there to give the audience an extra jolt with that loud cliche jump scare sound effect playing over the top of it. But here, Leigh Whannell uses that fake out jump scare technique to his advantage to build tension around the threat of this film. And then when it comes to the other two jump scares, he takes the invisibility suit design and he uses it to play around with the cliche jump scare of the villain popping out. And these jump scares, they don't just have tension built up beforehand, but in execution, they add more tension onto this conflict. Leigh Whannell just builds up an amazing amount of tension, explosively erupting at the right moments. It is beautifully structured and perfectly staged to escalate the movie into pulse-rising territory. The restaurant scene is shocking. The hospital scene is thrilling. The first time Cecilia is attacked by Adrian when she's home alone, getting flown across the room is terrifying. There are so many scenes that hit with an impact because of how Leigh Whannell builds up to these scenes and how he executes these specific scenes in such a visceral way. This film is rooted in the thrills of the horror thriller genre, while also diving into the psychological realm to explore its themes. So you get the best of both worlds. And all of these elements come together so well. It's what makes this a good film. But what stops the movie from being great and so much more better is a particular twist in the last 20 minutes. And it's the twist that involves Adrian's brother. Thematically, it works, but narratively, it doesn't. Thematically, it adds onto the character of Adrian. It shows how he manipulates Cecilia even more, and it shows how he tricks people into thinking he's the good guy. But this film is between these two characters, Adrian and Cecilia, and what he has done to her, and what he's currently doing to her. It's what the film is all about. It's focused on that dynamic. And so, when you introduce someone else, the brother, as being a part of this all along with Adrian, it sort of destroys that dynamic, while also having no motivation behind why the brother character would be a part of this in the first place. It even opens up a plot hole. It just felt like a throwaway idea to beef up the runtime and to get Cecilia at Adrian's house for the showdown. And because the twist is embedded into the DNA of the film now, it kinda hurts the movie. And at that point, it becomes apparent that the concept is stretched out a little bit too far. But it still doesn't take away from the concept itself and how Leigh Whannell enhances the material by reimagining this iconic character to fit the modern times, using the Invisible Man concept to explore themes of gaslighting and the emotional and psychological scarring that comes from being in an abusive relationship. This is something we don't see when it comes to horror remakes, or any remakes in general. Usually with remakes, they just make the same film as the original, and with horror remakes, they make the same film as the original, but with a shit ton of cliche jump scares. The Invisible Man is a step in the right direction for remakes, and how they should be approached. This is one of the best horror remakes I've seen in a long time. It is a refreshing and entertaining film, and I'm happy to say that The Invisible Man is a good remake. Okie dokie, guacamole, let me know what you guys thought about the movie down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you guys like this video and you want to see more, click subscribe and I'll see you later.